Okay, now I believe we're going to go into our next presenter here. This gentleman comes all the way from Sioux Valley, Manitoba. Are you still with us, Kevin? Kevin, dokialala o leche obo inachni. Oh, there he is. Oh. But I'd like to introduce this next individual. He's all the way from Sioux Valley, Manitoba. This young man here has been wishing to instill this attitude of, I hate to say Indianness, or First Nations way of thought to a lot of people. He uses various vehicles. I know one is Facebook. I follow him on that. Provides a lot of good direction, a lot of good concern, a lot of good questions about who and what it is to represent as a Dakota person. And so, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we're going to introduce to you none other than Kevin Tanchin. Kevin, come on up. Have a whole hour for us. Take your time.
Have a whole hour?
Yeah.
Okay. Right here?
Yeah.
Oh, me talk yuppie. I don't talk that deep. Washte wasnya hipe. Kevin Tachan imakiapi. Wipozoko wakwaheted imata ha. Okade yomikpi wasna yunshkia na bechuzapi. It's been 2.5 years, 2.5 long years. We haven't gotten a chance to be together. It's good to see everybody. I know there's people that are online that are watching, and just to let everybody know that we had a hard time, Ocheti Shakuin. We lost a lot of relatives to COVID. We lost a lot of relatives over the 2.5 years. But from where we are at our homes, at our home fires, we pray for each other, we take care of each other, we help out where we can. We send money where we can. And I just want to make the people online that are watching know that we're thinking of them, even though you're online, you're not here. That our prayers are with you in your communities, all the way down to Oglala, over to Rosebud, all those different places. Our thoughts are with you guys. We'll all get together at a Wachipi somewhere. So I just wanted to bring that up. I know they have my presentation over there. I didn't know whether I should bring this along. I've had it for a while. And then I thought about it. I'm proud of being a Dakota. I'm not an Itancha by voting, by politics. Wang wachipe, you have mawani, naku shua kawachi, naku tatankawachi, wanji icham, naku shuktokcha, hochoka wanji. I've done a lot in my life, my young life, as I was brought into this world. 15 years old, I started doing Inipi. I started going around with my grandparents. Okay, I saw a lot. I put all my craziness away at a young age, and I did the best that I could to try and save our culture, save our ways, teach whoever I can. And before I came, this was sitting there. So I brought him along to come and visit with you guys. It's a protection for our people. We look after it, it looks after us. Dako kage, wakan, heundeche. I brought him along with me. I'm gonna go into a little bit here and explain why I'm here for our language conference. I'm excited to be here. I was excited to hear Joseph this morning. I'm a big fan of his. Read a lot of his stuff and listened to some of his audiobooks and that. And he's done a lot for the Lakota people, Joseph. And I would have liked to have met him, and one day I'll hopefully get a chance to meet him somewhere. But yeah, the title of this presentation is Unkoki Pido. And for those of you who don't know the language, we can do this. We can do this. Go ahead and hit the Hemye. That was me 30, 40 COVID pounds ago. I got that down in Prairie Island. Okay, go next one. Dakota dead wa here. I sat myself when I'm at home. Why did they ask me to come and do this? I'm putting this thing together, and I said, Dakota dead wa here. Why did I come here? And it's because of our language. Yape. Dakota Yape. We must save our language for the next generations. We've been saying that for a long time. For generations, we've been saying it. Because we keep doing the same things over and over and over and over. And then we say, if they don't know their language, who will they be? And I've had discussions with people over the years that say, if you aren't speaking your Dakota language, then you can't call yourself Dakota. You're Dakota. You come into this world, Dakota. You knew your language when you came into this world. Your first things that came out of your mouth. You're Dakota. Who will they be? I always see people post about Pierre Trudeau, his poster, and saying, if you don't learn your language, then you have no business asking us for anything. And I think that that's going to inspire people to learn their language. Hey, we have to go a different way. We've been showing that Pierre Elliott Trudeau poster for 20 years, and we're still losing our fluency. We're still losing our speakers. We have to change our approach. We have to let them know that our language is a good way to live, to know our language. We'll see the world in a different way. We'll be proud of who we are with our language. It's got so much hidden within it. We have to approach it that way and encourage them to learn the language instead of making them feel guilty or being angry at them because they don't know their language. That hasn't worked in a long time. Misha, I heard Dakota everywhere growing up. It was our first language before we experienced day school. Inawage, atewage na was Dakota wodakapi kushi. Tui, Mamana, Ateda, Ishida, Wasna Dakota Wodekape, Chewa again, Tankewa again, Wasna Dakota Yape. Hechidi Chachma. I heard it all my life. And then I went to day school and they tried to take it from me. But I still understood it. I went into the bush, I put up a lodge, and I sat in there for 4 days. And I prayed for my language to come back, and it came back fast. And then they say, Dakota, that's true. I learned old words in ceremony. I learned old words in my dreams that people haven't heard for a long time. It's a different language, and this is how our language came to us in the first place, through our visions, through our songs. So we got to go back and pray for our language. We got to go and do those things. We got to help our kids with their Ishnati, with their Hambrecha. Their language will come back to them quick. Many retain their language despite the attack on our languages through residential schools, through day schools. How did they do it? I know some of the older people, they were sneaking away and they were hiding in the bush, and they talked Dakota to each other. And we don't honor them enough for bringing that language back and saving the language the way they did. But still, they only had a certain amount of language when they came back. And then the old people, when they came back to their community, they didn't embarrass them. They just went back on with life, and then they just melted back into the community again, and Dakota took off again with their life. But every once in a while, they'll call each other. And they'll say, how do you say this? Is there a word for this? I know my mom calls over here. My mom calls Chinupokpa. She calls all over trying to find a word sometimes. And then people call her. And they all work together to try to find words for some of these things. So language learning is even happening at that level with our fluent speakers. It's hard to do, but it's the way of life that we have to be able to find these things. When did things change for our people, specifically in the family homes? Why are people not speaking Dakota in their homes? So those are some of the things that I'm gonna go through here as I change the slide here with my powers. Rashte. Traditional lifestyles. Storytelling is a huge part of our passing on of knowledge. Woyake is how we say storytelling. Woyake has much more meaning rather than the English word story. When you use Dakota language, it is steeped in truth. Woyake. You'll say hohechitu at the end when you're telling your story. But when you tell the story in English, people don't know if you're lying or not, because the language is that way. It's not honest, it's not true. You all know people who tell stories in your communities, and they keep a straight face, and then they don't know if it's real or not, and then they start laughing, and then you know they're lying to you, eh? We all have those guys in our communities, but they do it in English. If they did it in Dakota, they'll end it as, oh, hate you do, and then you know it's true. Don't abuse our language and start using it to play jokes and stuff like that, and hurting people and lying and that. Oh, hate you do is a really important part of our language. The information age, hey, radio, TV to present day, the biggest enemy of our Dakota language is English. It's not residential school, it's not government. The biggest enemy of our Dakota language is English. We are fierce warriors, we are fierce people when it comes to defending who we are as a Dakota, except for when it comes to English. We don't fight back. We have to go back to who we were. Teata he tabshkata pe head oambreke nka iukchamanke. When did things change? What was the tipping point? The TV showed up in Canada in the 1930s. The TV stations didn't start until the 50s. Massive rollout didn't happen until a decade later, so the only ones who could afford it bought one. And many of our Dakota people continued to live our way of life despite residential school and day schools. We'll go on to the next slide. Pay down. An example of a family of 8. Here's a mother and father who worked while the kids stayed with Unkan Kushi. They had 3 more kids, so Kushi and Unkan were their teachers, entertainers, their storytellers, their counselors, etc. Then the mother and father had a few more kids, and then by then they bought a TV. While these next 2 kids got to experience Kushi and Unkan for a little while, they heard Dakota and they understood it. That sign says grandparents play an important role in the transmission of Native American values, history, and language in their grandchildren. The cartoons came when they got TVs and other shows appeared, and Kushi and Unkan were no longer needed. Goofy was the teacher, and Goofy didn't speak Dakota. So in your communities, in your families, look at your families. The oldest ones are fluent, and then partway through, they understand it, but they don't speak it. That's where the TV came in. That's where they lost it. The way that happened, you can see when that family bought a TV. And that's where it happened. That influence of English is everywhere. How do we gauge intelligence as Dakota people, as Indigenous people? When people think of intelligence, we automatically look at the standards set by Europeans. Their schools and their systems. Did you get your grade 12? Did you get your degree? Are you doing your master's or your PhD? We put that education over our own intelligence. We hold it higher than our own. When I was going to Brandon University, I was working at the school division, and I was there for about 25 years. And in that time, there was a group of high school students, and they were graduating, and I went to go to see them. I bought pizza, and I took them star blankets, and we were talking, and I said, what are you guys gonna do next? You're gonna go to college, you're gonna go to university? And they said, no, probably do nothing for a year, or maybe work. I said, you should go and try university or college while you guys are still in that mode of school. And they said, oh, I don't want to go to school. Did you go? And I said, no. Well, I went 1 year, but I didn't last. I said, well, don't tell us to go. If you didn't go, don't tell us to go. So I said, these kids these days, I thought. One of them said, well, we'll go to university if you go. So I made a deal with them, and I went to university with them in 2009. I went back to university. I was already in my 40s, my mid 40s. And I took those high school grads to university, and I ended up tutoring them through university. And I ended up helping them through, but they graduated. They graduated with honors. They went on to become professors, lawyers, business people. They needed somebody to kind of help them go through it all without losing themselves in the system, without assimilating more than they were. So I went with them back to university, and I graduated in 2013. I walked across the stage, and they offered me a job right there. I was surprised. I never even applied for the job. But they gave it to me, and they asked me to go back. And in that time that I was going to university, there was a Métis professor. He was telling me, I write like I speak. And I was saying, well, that's a good thing. You understand what I'm trying to say? And they said, no, I'm trying to get you to think and write like an 18-year-old white boy. And how do the young kids say it today? I was shook. I was shook. I couldn't believe this guy said that to me. I'm trying to get you to think like an 18-year-old white boy. So I rebelled. I didn't do it. I just did my work. I did my writing. I did my papers, my thesis, the way I talk. I just wrote it the way I do, and I included my language in there too, bits and pieces. I said, well, if you don't understand it, take a Dakota class. And they didn't give me any heck or anything, because I think I was probably older than some of those professors. But it was good. I stood my ground. We spent our time trying to sound Washichu. You know, when a person calls on the phone, if they're a Dakota or a Washichu, just by the way the conversation goes, yeah, you guys do that every once in a while, yeah. Say the phone rings. Oh, yeah, I'm okay. Things are going wrong. You know, what are you doing? You can tell I'm talking to a Dakota. But if I answer the phone, I say, hello. Yes. How are things over there? Yes, it's nice outside, isn't it? And then I just start sounding like a shit. You can see how it goes and how we change our way of talking, change our way of thinking. We're not true to ourselves. So we gotta watch those types of things that we do to ourselves. We search for words to sound smart, like discombobulated, indubitably, forthwith. In other words, you only find in a thesaurus, but we don't put that effort into our own languages. We'll go through all these dictionaries and books and stuff to try to sound smart, but we don't do the same for our own language. Hey, Yukchapo. It's like there's an attack on Dakota. When we don't value our language, no one else will. They can go back to Scotland or Ireland if they lose their language. But if we lose it here, it's gone forever. I grew up hearing that all the time. We look around in our communities and it's still that way. We're losing our fluent speakers quick. Where are we gonna go? If we don't change anything in the next 20 years, where are we gonna go to get our language? We have to change. We have to change the way we're doing things. We're competing with TV, with music, movie, video games, and this is why the old people are saying language learning starts at home. And remember how happy we were when Dances with Wolves was coming out. Some of you guys went to watch it. You're just excited to hear Dakota in the theater, and then you found all the mistakes. Oh, you're just critical, yeah. But it was good. And then you went back again, right? You went back to watch it a second time. Some of you even went a third time, a fourth time. It wasn't for the popcorn, it was to hear Dakota. And then years later, somebody said, why didn't he pick Chante Washtimi? Why did he go with that girl with the ugly hair? All those beautiful Lakota women, and he chooses the girl that couldn't braid her own hair. But we were happy to hear Lakota when that show came out, and we watch it. And now more and more we're seeing it as a way to learn language. People watch it so they can understand it, and then they use it to write things down. And they say, oh, that's what he's saying. And now they're using it to learn. So that's what we have to do. We have to encourage our people to get into entertainment and things like that and use our language. And this way we can inspire that next generation to find a different medium and bring our language back that way. We argue over how language is being written. I don't argue about how language is being written. It disappoints me sometimes that it gets a little bit crazy with the arguments and that, but oh. We argue over our language, and there's a guy down in the US who is fighting for language rights and intellectual property rights, and he did a consent form, and I got a chance to look at it and read it, and I asked him for permission for our community. So I took that consent form and I kind of tweaked it a little bit to suit our community. And his name is Ray Takenel. I probably know him as Reg Charging. That's the guy that was saying, not that sacred, that guy. He did a lot of work in protecting his grandmother's language and intellectual property. And when you think about it, how many of you in here that are elders or fluent speakers had people come in and give you an interview and you had to sign something, and then they just left? They give you like a couple $100 honorarium or something and they're gone. Most of you probably did. You gave away that intellectual property. You gave away your rights to that stuff. So what we do is we write it up ourselves, and when the universities and them come to see our old people, our older people can pull it out and say, no, you sign ours. Anytime you come into my community to interview me, you sign this. I'm not signing yours. And then whenever we're doing any kind of work together, you're on my terms, I'm not on yours. That's what we have to do, is to protect our knowledge keepers. Take care of our language, take care of our history, our knowledge. And one day I went and asked my mother for her curriculum, and she had no idea what the heck that was. I just started teaching language at the time, 10 years ago or 11, 12 years ago, whatever it was. And I said, it was what you used to teach us. And she kind of just laughed at me. Said, you know, your lesson plans, your rubric, your outcomes. And I did it kind of as a joke with her. And just to let her know that this is not how we teach. We don't teach language as a subject. We infuse language into all our subjects. That's how we have to do it. If we're going to save our language, if we do it like English, like an English class or a French class, we're never going to save our language. We have to infuse Dakota into all of them. We're focused on teaching Dakota like a subject that we're not creating speakers. This one always interested me. Let's put our minds together to see what life we can make for our children. These are the ways that our people learn: visual, auditory, kinesthetic. Visual, auditory, kinesthetic, hands-on. So many people ask, what is the answer? Many say full immersion is the answer. This is what educators have been saying for decades in our schools. Full immersion, full immersion. We've heard it all the time, and we know it's there. Why aren't we doing it? This is what parents have been asking for decades. And we have to look at how this will function in today's society. If I turn on a switch tomorrow and asked everyone to go full immersion, are you ready to go full immersion? We're not. Do you have the resources? Do you have the human resources to teach full immersion? Do you have speakers, teachers that can speak it? Do you have teaching resources? What are they going to use to teach the classes? Do you have financial resources? When I was working in the school division, there was a Hutterite colony in the school division, and there was two French schools in that school division. And it was my job to bring indigenous culture into all of the schools. So I went to go and see them. They invited me to their schools. I went to the Hutterite colony, and I got to see how their school worked. And all morning they were speaking in Lower German, High German. All these little kids, they're working around in their school, in their language, learning their culture, their history, where they came from. And then they had lunch, and then they went out and they did land-based learning. They were checking the chickens. There's little 10-year-old kids were driving giant air seeders and all kinds of stuff going on. They were working. They were doing land-based learning, but in the morning, they were learning with their language, culture, and history. And I thought, this is what we're missing. This is what we should be doing. We should be going into partial immersion right away with the resources that we have, that we can put together a partial immersion school. First 2 years. And then after those 2 years, we'll have that time to develop more resources for the next 2 years after that, so we can go full immersion. But we can't turn a switch. We have to take it in steps. They always tell us 1 step at a time. If you're going on a journey, you can't jump from here to there. You have to take a step at a time. And yeah, I did get potatoes and corn at the Hutterite colony. I got it cheap. I could have got star blankets and mucklucks there too now. Holy smokes, those people are industrious. Anyway, I don't know if there's any Hutterites here. I might get in heck here. This is what I was talking about, partial immersion. We need time to create these resources for specific subjects for a half a day. When all those subjects are covered, then writers and developers can focus on the second half of the day, which will be a full immersion program. We don't need curriculum developers. That's the go-to. When people start talking about language, full immersion, partial immersion, they'll say, well, we need to develop curriculum. No, we need to develop resources first. Curriculum development comes later. And if we're gonna do it, do we have to do it the way the school is now? Do we have to have a curriculum? Let's design our schools the way we want. Let's design curriculum that's there for the whole community. They say our language should be taught at home. And it's true. Our kids, their first language when they come into this world should be ina ate. But what are we encouraging them to say? Say mom. Did he say mom yet? Did he say dad yet? Ina ate. First words. Teach the young parents how to speak to their kids in Dakota all the time. And then by the time they get to grade 5 to kindergarten, they should be fluent. When you ask some of our fluent speakers, our first language speakers, that's what they say. When I went to kindergarten, I was fluent. And then they beat it out of me. We can do that with our kids if we start teaching them at home too. I know there's some kids in our Dakota communities that are doing that. Some of our young parents are teaching their kids at home, and they're going into schools and they're going into daycare and kindergarten, and they already know way more than their teachers. But it's good to see parents doing that with their kids. There's one guy named Jared, I think he's in Oregon or Washington or something. His kids, Santa Coy and Hashkinaquai, I think is his kids' names. He's teaching them Dakota right from birth. And he recorded a video of them. He walked in to go and say goodnight to his kids. And it's dark in the room. but he put his camera phone there and he recorded them, and they're talking Dakota to each other before they go to sleep. They're just little kids, 4 years old, 3 years old, talking Dakota in the room. And he recorded them and he sent them the recording to me. He said, they're learning. I'm using your book. I'm using the stuff that you sent, that I picked up from you, and they're speaking Dakota, he said. And he was happy about it. Minnesota, they're doing a lot of things over there. There's a lady that's raising her young girl over there with just Dakota in her house. And that little girl, what the heck was her name? Giselle Kimamana, I believe. And she's getting pretty close to fluent. These little kids are learning quick. They're a sponge. You want to do it at that time of their life. And so it's important that we focus on that too. We don't forget our parents, our teachers aren't the ones that have the sole responsibility to teach language. So how do you start? Wocheke hetoka. When I teach Dakota at BU, I always start with offering a chashasha. We actually go to the hill and they split up and they pray for their language. I taught it for maybe about 2 terms. I taught Dakota and it wasn't sticking. Nothing was helping these guys. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll take them out to the bush. Maybe I'll take them on the hill. We'll go and pray for their language, because that's what I did. And the ones that came with me on the first day of school went out and they disappeared into the bush, into the hill, Brandon Hills, and they prayed for their language. And some of them didn't come. They decided to skip out that day because they knew what we were going to do. So they said, oh, it's not important. I'm going to go to a student meeting or whatever they went to. But the ones who came out and prayed for their language, they learned fast and they hung on to it. And the ones who didn't, they struggled through the whole term, and the other students had to help them, and they barely passed because they didn't make a commitment. That commitment is theirs to make for their language, to Akantaka. They didn't make a commitment to me when they went out to the bush. They made it to Akantaka. The onus is on them to learn. So it was a skill that I got them to lean on throughout their time at university. I told them, you're going to learn to pray in Dakota. It's the first things that I did right away, to teach them a prayer song, to teach them Dakota right away. Wocheke. You're going to need this for the rest of your term, for the rest of your school career, because there's going to be times in psychology when you want to go and slap your professor, but no, go and pray for them. You're going to be frustrated because your marks are low. You're going to want to quit. No, go to the hill, go and pray. You know how to do these now. And a lot of them did. And then eventually I was talking to my students halfway through the term, and some of them were doing well in school. I kept asking them, how are you guys doing? And I find out that they quit their drinking, that they quit the drugs that they were doing on. For Washichas, they say you're here for a good time, but remember you're here to go to university, but to have a good time. And we can't do that as Dakota. That's not our way. So I taught them this: you don't lose who you are as you're going through university. Don't forget where you come from. Itampo, Danikotap. And so they went through that. They all did really, really good. And then they found out that they ended up quitting their addictions. And I asked them why. And he said, well, because the stuff that we're learning and the stuff that we're carrying in prayers and all that, that's more important. That's what I was looking for all my life. And I don't need that stuff anymore. That's what they were talking about. In my class, I teach a 75-25 split. Gee, that sounds like a bowling term. I don't bowl, but that's what it sounds like to me. 75% of my class is Dakota. 25% is culture and history, because you can't separate them. And this is what made my attendance, my students, good all the time. They came to every class. And even if I got sick and I couldn't go, they were sitting there doing work anyway. They all gathered together and they had kind of like a language coffee shop kind of thing. If I got sick, they went anyway. They didn't skip. But because of that 25%, they started coming for the 25% at the beginning. At the end, they were coming for the 75%. And that's the way I've done it all this time. These are the 4 things you need if you want to be successful in learning Dakota and teaching Dakota. You need repetition. It has to be relevant. It has to be fun and it has to be safe. How many of you have heard people say that I don't speak my language? I understand, but I don't speak it because somebody laughed at me. Most of you probably went through that. Somebody laughed at me or somebody corrected me in public and embarrassed me in front of other people. That has a profound effect on a person. Slides. By focusing on these factors, students should be fluent by grade 8. If you make it fun, if you make it relevant, if you have repetition. There are times I ask an older person, by what grade should this be taught? And I'm thinking just anything. And they'll say, well, I'll teach that in grade 8. Because when we're talking about teaching our kids, we'll say, what do we want them to know by grade 4? What do we want them to know by grade 5 at that age? What do we want them to know by 12, 13 years old? And I tell them I teach it by grade 5. Way earlier, because we have to have high expectations for our kids to learn the language, and they can learn it at a younger age quick. If you give our Hokshiapa a foundation in Dakota, they'll succeed in life. They will know who they are. They will be able to talk to a Kantanka. Their worldview will always be Dakota. And as they get older, their hormones will drive them crazy, but that foundation will always bring them back. You guys know what it's like. You guys were young and crazy and hormones 100 miles an hour. Raise your hand. Come on, raise your hands. But if you give them that foundation in their culture and the language, they'll always come back. And that's an important part of our development. Odoa kinako, odoa hinawa ka. We learn much from our songs. For many, this is their first experience in language. I sat at many drums in my life. Many didn't know the language, but they sat and they learned. If they didn't get it, they'd ask the lead singer or another among the group, and they weren't ridiculed. They weren't shamed. The ones who knew had patience and sang it over and over and over and over until they got it. One time we were at Sisseton Powell, and we were just getting ready for a singing contest, and Hank brought out a real old song, and none of us knew it. And most of the guys in the group didn't speak Dakota very well. He sang it over and over and over. He didn't get mad. He didn't get frustrated. And he made sure we got it. By the time we all got it, the judges were standing around us. Oh, Hukka Riverside Dakota Iriapo. We all sang it like we sang it for 20 years. But that's what good teaching has got to be like. Your lead singers have to be patient. Your drum group all has to work together as a group and encourage each other, motivate and help each other. If our classrooms can operate the way a drum group operates, we'll be successful. They had no fear to ask if they didn't know a word. They had no shyness. They were met with patience. They even stared at my mouth when I was singing, just so they can get the word. And I had to cover my mouth because I was when I was singing. But this is how you teach Dakota. Some of them, they'll use body language. They'll use sign language in that when they're teaching Dakota. But some people, they can't get it. They have to stare at your mouth. And so you try and say it as best as you can when you're talking, especially around the drum. So that way, you have to have focus. You have to have a safe space. You have to have a good leader. It has to be meaningful. This is what the singers get when they're sitting around the drum. Think in Dakota. How do you do that? I've been saying that for a long time. Think in Dakota. I did exercise and used visuals of movement. I did exercises for people to be able to start thinking in Dakota. And by the time I finished them, I asked them, how many of you thought in English? And then they realized, no, I thought about that whole thing in Dakota. I said, yeah. And you exercise a different part of your brain when you do that. Once they understood, they continued to say the words. They realized at the end that they didn't think in English once. And some of them, I can still go up to them and ask them words and they'll remember it, even months later. And I only had to do it a few times with them. I write my tests in English only to get them practice thinking in Dakota. I don't write my tests in Dakota. I only do them in English, and the bottom is why. If I asked you to translate that, if I asked you to translate that, right away you're thinking in English. But if I say translate, long ago the chief here was called Whitecap. Translate that. Long ago, Ehana, chief, Itancha, Whitecap, Wapaska. So you're starting to think in Dakota. So I write everything in English to encourage them to think in Dakota. Word frequency is what I do too. I teach by word frequency. What will they hear and need to say most often? I don't want to give somebody 1,000 words that they're never going to use. I'm only going to give them stuff that they're going to use in their everyday life. And then I add to it as we develop more skills. It goes from a small circle, like a bullseye. All of this in here is what I teach them. All the stuff they need to hear in their home and in their life and hanging around with their friends. All those words I'll teach them. I'm not teaching them anything out here. This is the focus first. And then as they get that and memorize that, okay, I'll go out to the next ring. And then they get that and memorize it, okay, I'll go to the next ring. And then I'll go to the next ring. Word frequency, we have to use the ones we use the most in our life. We have to heal our language. It experienced genocide just like we did. It has a power and energy to it. Our language is sacred. It has that energy. It's wakan. So we have to heal it. That's what he meant. We have to heal our language. You see different things that are coming into our language that aren't Dakota words. We have to make sure we keep our Dakota language Dakota. That we keep Lakota language Lakota. Nakota, Nakota. They have to keep theirs the same. Once we heal the language and heal ourselves in the process, language learning increases rapidly. When I'm talking about teaching in the schools and teaching language and fluency by grade 5, by grade 8, there's nothing saying that you can't teach Lakota in your Dakota schools. Nothing saying you can't teach Nakota in your Dakota schools. Because when your kids marry out and they go to those communities, they'll know their language. They'll know their history, they'll know their culture through their language. That's what we should be focusing on. Being able to do the things that we want in all our three dialects. These are projects at Wipazokawakpa that we're working on, land-based learning, language full immersion camps. We're in partnership. There was a 30-day full immersion camp that happened just on the outside of Winnipeg. They had a camp there, and it was for the Kakatwi. Kakatwi and I, they went there and they didn't speak English for 30 days. Just from 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock, I think, was the only time that they were allowed to speak English over lunch, and they could text their relatives or whatever. After that, their phone was taken away. And they stayed in the language for 30 days. Some of them didn't even speak Anishinaabe when they got there. But by the second week, they were just as fluent as the fluent ones. Those fluent ones brought them all up to speed really, really quick. They had games, they had exercise, it was fluent. That's what we have to do. And I have an opportunity to do that with our programs in Sioux Valley. So I might be putting out a call to your Dakota communities to send a few people to come and join in and start getting your semi-fluent speakers fluent again. Language nests are what we're working on. What are the original language nests? That's our homes. Language is at home. Everybody speak Dakota in your home. When you go home, speak Dakota. But we don't have that right now, so we have to go to a language nest to remember, okay, I can take this into my house. I can use all of this stuff at this language nest and incorporate it in my home. That's what that's gonna be. We're doing language resource development. We're working on all different types of stuff, and Tui Eleanor is here. She's working in our program here, and she's hiding there. She's in, don't call me up there, Kevin. Don't. But I'm glad she's here. She's been doing some amazing things with translations and stuff too. Develop community strategy to guide the process. That's what we're working on. So yeah, we have programs that are going along very well, and once we get really going along, we'll share some of our findings with you. I'm still doing stuff at Brandon University. Online classes will be up and running in the fall. they're always talking about developing language clamps through the university, resource development, but I'm going to tell them this is on ours, like this is directed by us, not you. So make sure that the university knows their place when it comes to language learning. Find or create a budget for artists to access for financial aid to develop resources. I suppose I didn't write resources right. Kids, books, songs, etc. If your leaders in the community can set aside 50,000 or something, and people can apply for like 5,000 to write a children's book, well, you give them 2,000. Okay, here you go, get started, buy your supplies, your material. When you have the finished product, we'll give you another 1,500 for finishing the project, and you'll have copyrights to that book. The remaining part of that 5,000 will help you publish it and print it with the rest of that money. We have to encourage our people to be writers and do video and do audio books, and we need artists in our communities to do a lot of those different things. So we need to find a budget for a lot of those things. Be active in your learning and learning of others around you. Anytime you see language things happening in your community, get involved. Remember, it's a very sensitive thing for our people, and laughing at or publicly shaming and correcting people can set them back years and affect their kids and grandchildren. You always correct people in private, and you don't give people how. Use that. And lastly, remember, we can do this. Next slide. If you guys have any questions for me, I don't know how much time I have left. Hunter Tommy is coming. He's got that MC walk. Only MCs walk like that. Singers have a little longer stride, but that's an MC walk. If there's no questions, okay, Pidama.
Big round of applause. And again, I'm sure there's questions, Kevin. Stay up here. I'm sure we got some questions. We got a young lady over here who's got raising her hand. Dagoyachiwo.
For sure. Yeah.
She was asking if she could get a copy of his presentation, and he's saying yes, for sure.
I'll be here. You just come and I have my laptop there. If you have a USB, bring your USB and I'll put it in. Give me my presentation. I'll be here tomorrow too. So if you can find one, or if the Whitecap has extra ones, it's a little flash disk. And if you need like language lessons and stuff, I can show you how I teach language. Some of the lessons that I have, I can put those on there too. My stuff's always for whoever wants to use it can use it. Just tell me what you want and I'll share it with you.
And also, you're all witnesses that you guys that see this Wapaha sitting up here. He's going to give that to me because I'm such a good guy. He took I was gonna tell him I had a dream about that. As if I was healing people with that on. But do we have any more questions for Kevin? Very good presentation, addressing a lot of things. And if you think about it, that gives you the right. You know, we people were so used to following the wasichus, we got to be given the okay. Well, we give you the okay. You can go out and do these things, you know, be innovative in your thought. Use that critical thinking to really address these issues of concern that you think about, because that individuality is key. Us, we, and them. The individualism, I, me, and my, is how we don't think. So when you start thinking Dakota, Lakota, or Nakona, then you realize the individuality is really important. The us, we, and them, for the sake of the greater good. And this is what it's all about. Okay, Takya. You think? Yeah. And so, and about the future, that's, we don't do this for us. We don't do this for money. We don't do this for praise and accolades. We do it because we can, and we're supposed to, as we, again, prepare ourselves for that inevitable, facing that mystery of death. People don't realize that's why we do all these things. You be good to everything and everybody as well as you can. And as we do that, we have individuals that help us understand that walking on this red road of understanding, we can all get together in a common mindset, let that happen. So, hecha tuelo, daya chanok tahashi, wopilai chichiapelo. All right, one more time, big round of applause for Kevin Tanchin. Yeah, all right, we really like that. But let me see, we're going to stay on task. Kim, how we doing with time? Where'd she go? Oh, well, how are we doing on time? Good? Okay. Right after Kevin, we have, let me see, is it a break? Is it a break? Go over there and try that one machine. I left money in there and I reserved it. But it looks like we're going to take a break until 2:15. Let me check the time here. Yeah. We're going to take about a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll be speaking with our final speaker of the day. It'll be my good buddy, Jackie Bird. So go take a little break, go out there and have a cigarette and walk around, loosen up a little bit. Boy, you guys are doing really well, man. I really want to thank you a lot. But and again, you'll be really inspired by Jackie. She has quite the personality and does a lot of innovative things. She does a lot of painting, a lot of therapeutic stuff, I'm sure, for herself. But I'm sure she'll give us a good show. She sings lots and has a lot of sings a lot of men's songs. As if. But we'll take a 10-minute break and we'll be right back. Dokshake. Hahe mitaki episka ushimalo gnagupta. Oh man, I don't even know what I said. Rod, Ishnana, what did I say? I know how you savages talk. I heard that on Dances with Wolves. And the other word I know is lieutenant. Oh. Yeah, dumb bear. Yeah, that's another one. But we're going to ask everybody to make their way into the conference room now, kind of call them back in. We have a very, very beautiful personality coming up next, and I say that because I know her personally. She's one of my buddies for many years. Don't get to see her much because she's very, very busy, but bring them all back in. We're waiting, Jackie, to get some of these folks back into the room and whatnot, and they're making their way back in. But I can't say enough about how this lady promotes and utilizes her blessings, and I call them blessings because she's really good at what she does, but she's always performing. She always has her regalia on. She used to be, oh, and maybe she still is, a hoop dancer. Yeah, kind of like that. I remember way back in the day, Kevin Locke was the guy hoop dancer, and this lady was the girl hoop dancer. And then, of course, that went a whole long ways down the road, helped out a lot of people understand the importance of identity and acknowledging that good direction that they were providing. Yeah, that's good. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to introduce this young lady. We're going to ask you to come on back in. We're going to welcome back our final speaker of the day. Jackie has been praised for her ability to get her audience involved with contemporary and traditional music, songs, and dances. Woven throughout Jackie's performance are the intricacies and the belief of her Native American culture. Attending today's session with Jackie, you will learn how her performances are made more than just cultural expression. They are a gift shared by a spirited people who have mastered the skills necessary to preserve their culture. So at this time, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you none other than my good buddy, Jackie Bird. Jackie, are you there somewhere? Dokia Lalawo. There she is.
Dokia Dada, hey.
Oh, Astelo, Nistog.
Can you hear me
Oh,
good? Can you hear me?
yeah, we can hear you good. So go ahead. You got the floor, girl.
Okay. Hami Dakyapi. I'm Jackie Bird from the Mandan Hidatsa tribes. That's my dad. And my mom, she's a Dakota from Sisseton. And my dad, Gordon, he's a rock and roller. He comes from Fort Berthold. And he's even in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And my mom, she's an artist, and her name is Joanne. She used to be a maestess from Siston, and she's in the Hall of Fame for her impressionistic artwork. And so I was able to take both of my mom and dad's legacies from his music to her artwork and combine them and inspire all, wherever I go. I've been all over the world with singing, dancing, doing everything I can to the native arts. I've been to 9 other countries so far, and Kevin Locke was my teacher. He is my teacher. He taught me at an early age, and that's when I started the hoop dance. I started the interest as a little toddler, and then I got to learn as a teenager, and then I was still hoop dancing as a young mother, and then now my final stage as a young grandmother. So now I've been hoop dancing for 4 stages of life, and I'll be doing some of that later. In the back over here is my son Sheldon, and he has a Tatanka Oyate shirt that my mom made. See it? That's the shirt. He comes from the Blackfeet tribe also, and then he's Mandan Hidatsa and Dakota, and then I always sing with my guitar. So I'm gonna start with some music while everybody's still walking in from their smoke and their smile. I always tell my mom and dad, because my mom and dad smoke. They always I said, Dad, are you gonna go have your smoke and smile? I can't smoke, not even secondhand, because I want to keep singing and dancing, and it seems like I really have to not smoke. But here, except the Tanupa, I can do that. I'm gonna go ahead and start just as if it was a performance. And you are in South Dakota. This is 100 miles south of Siston, and this is where I live because my parents, they live about 20 miles there. Everything is backwards. They're over there because I'm pointing over there, but it's exactly mirroring at me. My mom and dad live over there, and I always follow them because our dads, give us our spirits, our mothers give us our blood. So I follow them wherever they go. I'm gonna start out with this song. It's a Hiraza song, and it was a song made by my grandpa, the late Charles Parshall. Charles Parshall composed a lot of songs. He's from Fort Berthold, and he made even like the Navy song, the Hiraza flag song, and he's really a super great composer. And also, I just wanted to make mention that I'll be going up to Fort Berthold because the last of their generation, my grandma Dolores Sand, who is a Parshall, she made her journey yesterday, so I'm going to be making my way up to Fort Berthold. And then the next generation is my dad's generation, who will be the elders now, and then I'm a young elder. I just turned 56 the other day. Okay, here we go. So I just wanted to share that song from my dad's side, my Hiraza, Arikara, and Mandan side. Three affiliated tribes. And speaking of that, there's a beautiful song that I made in tribute to my uncle Dean Peter Fox. Dean P. Fox, he loved everything about our ways. He loved the elders. He loved to dance. He was a great grass dancer. And even if it was starting to rain, all the dancers would be starting to walk off, but he'd stay dancing and just enjoying the elements. And he loved children. He loved everything about our culture traditionally. And he even graduated in Minot State with his degree. And then he was the very first one to wear his headdress when he was graduating. And then we lost him in 1999. And he used to take care of the buffalo a lot, the Tatanka. And the way he went was like a buffalo we've noticed. It was like over the cliff that we may live better. Seems like that's how he went out. So I made a tribute song to him and about him because he's my Dakshi and he's also my dad, as you know how that works. Well, let me take you back some years ago. It was cloudy that day, and it started after rain. You danced and you waited. You were sunshine that day. I saw you, the way you sing moves the the way you dance revives the soul, everything that you offer, a creator you honor. I saw you. That was tribute to Uncle Dean Fox. I never did put that on recording yet. My dad, he's a recording artist. He's well known for a song called 40 Days. He traveled all over with this song, and then they call it the national anthem of Indian country. Is I'm gonna give you 40 days to get back home, and it gets everybody on the dance floor. But I'm gonna go ahead and go to the songs that I love singing. I learned them way back in the 80s back at Flanju Indian School. I went to 10 different schools, and this was the final one. I graduated from there. And I was at Indian Club, and we were singing, just because you left me for someone else, don't think I'm sitting here. And then we sang that one, and we also sang so we were singing those 49s out at the campus on the big drum. And the next day I went to my music class. The teacher wasn't in there, and so they said you could just have study hall. So I picked up one of the guitars, and I was going like this, and it worked. I was going like this. And it worked, because usually it's hard to sing traditional music because it comes from someplace sacred. Dako Wakashkashka. It just like so, but when you're singing rock and roll, it kind of like is in a different, it's a regular time. It's not in that between sacred time where it's a little bit off in the middle. And so I had to sing like, so that's what I did. Oh, there was a car out there. Okay, so this is Lovesick Blues. So that is a sample of Lovesick Blues with the guitar and the drum. So then that song, I ended up learning it at my music class when the teacher wasn't there, from singing 49s the night before and going into contemporary music the next day, combining it. And I went and I showed my dad when I went home for the weekend, because Flange is a boarding school. So I said, Dad, listen to this. And then I showed him that. And then he put all kinds of music to it, started out with a flute intro. And then he said, you have to make a side B. So back then it was a cassette. So I made a side B, and then I had a cassette, and my sister took it over to Keeley radio station. And the next thing I knew it, they called on the landline, because we didn't have cell phones yet. And they said, do you do performances? Because we are getting so many requests for that song. And that's how I started performing. So I started with that one hit wonder. And the next thing you know it, they said, do you have any more music? So I had to hurry up and make a bunch of more songs. My dad said, you have to make 10 songs. And I thought, okay, I already made 2. And that was a 49, Tom Ware made that. He's a blues singer that from Oklahoma. He passed away now, but he gave me permission to do whatever I wanted with that song. And then I thought, well, can I sing this one too then? Just because you left me for someone else. He said, yeah. So then I went like this. No more crying, no more crying, hiding my tears in the dark. Yeah, I'm trying, yeah, I'm trying. Oh, my world is acting so sad. No more crying, no more crying. Yeah, I'm trying, yeah, I'm trying. Now my world is acting so sad. That's how that one was born. All from just because you left me. I gotta quit saying that so much. Cause my ex-mother-in-law, she said, will you sing that one that you made for Wayne? And it was that one. Okay, I know, back on track. So the last and final one-hit wonder is called Chea o Chile. And in my dad's language, you say, no honey, walk again. So Chea o Chile, Kevin Locke showed me this beautiful love song, and it's a real story. It's about this young man and young woman who are really in love, and here the young woman's man liked her best friend, and she said, well, just marry her then, but if you do that, I'm gonna work both of you over. But that was the song, and that it was really about. And then so Kevin said, can you learn this? And I said, sure. So then I put it into my contemporary version, but I don't talk about working over. I just sing it like this. Also in Hidatsa. So that's that song. So those are that's some of the music that I do that I wanted to express to you. And then also what I've been doing with the youth, our communities, or wherever I go, I dedicated my whole life to inspiring others to bring out their own gifts. So like here's some of the things I've made For example, I made these coloring packets. They have like a parflex on. I have it.
Oh, yeah.
And on one side, you could see that there's black and white. And then on these sides, there's like 21 different designs for the kids or anybody to color in. So I made these. I made 10,000 of these packets. And usually I just say, go ahead and just copy them for your whole school. So that's one of the things I've done to help others with therapy, because that's what helped me throughout my life was singing, dancing, painting, sewing, designing. My Hiraza grandma, she really was a beautiful designer, and I spent a lot of time with her. And so that's where my designing comes from. And let me see what else I have here. I'm gonna go ahead and have my son bring some of these outfits up closer. That one, that middle one. I mainly make these, I always invent these, like, this is kind of like acting as a jingle dress. Even though I make them like for stage. So I was showing this in a dream, so that gave me the permission to do it. I saw a fancy dancer and I thought, oh my goodness, that quill work. It's like, how do they make those neons and colors like that? And so then in a split instant, it took away the colors and the designs. In the dream, the dancer had like a masking tape wrapped. So then I thought, okay, so what I did is I took sinew and then I wrapped the strips. And then once you put the fabric paint on, it develops the texture. And so, like I said, I'm in my last stage of life, so I know I don't have the right to quill, but my mom does. But I didn't get the right to quill, but I did get the right to design. My Hidatsa grandma gave me the right to design at White Shield celebration. And then up here, I was just at a horse dance ceremony. And then these are some riders. My mom did the artwork. And I just wanted to express some of her artwork on there. So there's that. And everything I do is with tremendous meaning. Like, I'm glad we're all ceremony people so I can go into depth. Once when I was in Uweepi, there was a blue man, and then he didn't have hands, but he had these gourds, wagmuhas, and then wagmuha, and I was standing in there because I like to stand if they're singing Wiwang Wachipi songs. And then here he came over and he made me hold my arms up. And I was really trying to understand what he was trying to have me do. But he eventually got my arms to come out and they gave me this wagmuha. And then he pressed it into me. And then I remember I accidentally opened my eyes, but then I knew not to look at him. He was super sacred. And then, but I could see that he was all blue, like the moonlight was glowing on him. And he was praying in a super ancient language. You could tell that all he did was pray. And he was praying for me. And so I brought that out into this duster. Because I know the Wakia Oyate, they love shiny things. And so I did everything I could to make it shiny with only the shades of blue. And this one even glows in the dark. There's some glow in the dark paint there. And then there's the hail. And my Hidatsa grandpa, Crowflies tie, he had a hail shirt. And he was so strong with the elements, the Makpia Oyate, that he could pray and bring the rain. So back in Fort Berthold, the governor of North Dakota knew about that. So he asked Crow Flies High, he said, can you make it rain? So then he'd put his shirt on, his rain shirt that had hail, and then he'd go ahead and call it to rain. So anytime I think of hail, I think of his shirt. And then because when we are one with ourselves through the elements, that's our strongest. Heat at an extreme is blue, and cold at an extreme is blue. So this is a super healing color. And my grandma, her name is, in Hidatsa, you just call them Magoo. She's Ruby White Bear. Will you bring me one of those vests of them? So I put white bear tracks. That one doesn't have it, but one of those do. So I put these in a lot of my things that I make. Thank you, Sheldon. So I always put these white bear tracks. And then a lot of the designs, I always expressed that the good road is always in the center. It always welcomes us. If we stray away, we're always welcome back to the center. And we have to live in duality. There's always going to be good forces and bad forces. So we have to try to maintain a balance. So I like to put these in the designs a lot. Thank you, Sheldon. And then I'm a fancy shawl dancer. So I make all of my own things. In fancy shawl, kind of anything goes. Like as far as working with mixed medium, like different things, I just really get, you know how they did with the cones and jingle, the lid cones? I do the same thing with the materials of today. Like this one right here, I made from the Chunku Duta. And I usually explain to the youth the sweetness of life. I was taught that the north and south is the sweetness of life. In the north is red, in the south is white. Otherwise, some tribes have it the other way, but it is red and white, north and south. So I did that in honor of the Chunku Duta, the good road. And then on the black and yellow west and east, I remember that the grandmothers would say, in the west is where the ancestors come from, everything in the past. And the future is Wakaija, and the future generation comes from the east. And so I always remembered that, so I always make my hoops accordingly when I'm gonna dance with them with all the directions. So that was that one. This one, my Hidatsa name is Kocha Duia, corn woman. So I made this one last fall. And then I kind of pretended like I was from the Dead Grass Society. But I just like putting these neutral colors on there also. And I'm not really from the Dead Grass Society, but when I was looking at it, it reminded me of it. But this is honoring the corn, and I put flames in here because one time I was running an inipi, and when I was in the inipi, I was talking, I was so happy, and I was saying, and then, or something, and there was a flame that came right out of my hand. And so that's how much my love for the Oyate and traditional ways are. So I put that flame in here. So that's that one. I think well, that should be good for that. Oh yeah, just the orange one, please. I just wanted to express this next one. This next one, I was able to take part in Pipestone, Minnesota. There's a boarding school there where some of the children were missing. So Arvel and Paula, they asked me to come over there, and because it's only 20 miles away. Okay, then it might be a little bit farther. And could be 40 miles. But anyway, I made this because thinking of the children that went to the boarding school, and we all know about that. And I was able to stand with my takoja on one side, and the other guy stood with his on the other side. And then we tore the white sheet where they could be free, and you could just feel them. There were 3 So I just wanted to make a memory from that. So there's like the white sheets torn on the bottom and then the orange that they are free. The children that they were returned home. So these are some of the things that I make, also expressing the dreams. When we do the arts, dreams are like a diary or a journal. They just remind us of a time. Like here's some white flowers. That's a whole nother dream. But I'll get into the next thing I wanted to express. So when I do the hoop dance, my Hidatsa grandma gave me the right to do this. She gave me the right to wear my eagle plumes. And she said, always remember the West, because those are where the Akichita come from, or the soldiers of the universe, or the protectors. They're the ones that watch over us. So then I put it in the contraries, like the Heokas. And I put 3, an odd number. And now that it's spring and even summer next, I have to change these black ones to blue. I still have to rape and change them to blue. So then I think of that, and then I always honor that when I look into the West. You could go there. And then with these green ones, then I usually have a helper. I'll pick a little boy because he's going to be the chata. The hawk, I learned, flies counterclockwise, and it's just like a kichita of the feather friends. So I have one boy make the hawk out of these hoops. I usually help him. And then into the north, I'll remember keepers of the wisdom, the Tatanka Oyate, and the strength, and Ptesawi. I'll remember them. So that's when I make the globe into the north. And then to the east, again, the Wakaija, and I also think of keepers of the wind. And then the red over there is keepers of the earth, and then the blue keepers of the water. So I have all elements recognized. And then I'll always recognize Makbia Oyate, and then I think of keepers of the fire. So I have all the directions when I'm dancing, and I know I'm watching the clock at the same time, but can you move that please? So what I do is my Hidatsa grandma gave me the right to hoop dance back in 1988. In 1988, at the Mandaree celebration, she prayed in Hidatsa, and then she also said it was her dad had a smaller hoop in his bundle, and then it was just a small hoop, and then he could examine like an x-ray. Different people from the village would come to see him if there was something wrong, and he'd look through his hoop and detect where there was a dark spot or brown spot. Maybe they'll say on the lung, and then they'll give them the correct herbs after that. So then generations down, now I'm using the hoop, and I had to get a special right because in Hidatsa way, the women didn't do the hoop dance, and I didn't have any brothers. I don't have any brothers. And then my grandma said, "You're the only one that loves that dance so much." She said, "I'm just gonna go ahead and give you the right." So then I got the right to do the hoop dance. She prayed in Hidatsa at Mandaree. Then we had a giveaway and feed. And then that gave me the privilege back in 1988. So then I started doing the hoop dance, and Kevin showed me the different moves, but I always recognize those 4 directions for their holy duties. And then all I do, I'll be dancing full blast, And then when I'm doing the formations, I usually, I hope you can hear me, otherwise I have to yell way over there. I'm just gonna try to yell. Otherwise, I start with one, and then I'll start with one, and then in my quiet way, I'll ask permission of Unchimaka, and then the sky, and then I'll start, and then I move up, and then I pretend like I'm opening the sky, like that. Then I build it up, then I keep dancing. Then I make the first formation. This is the lightning bolt. And then I pretend like it's the Winter Olympics because I was really there in 2002 at the Salt Lake ones. It's kind of like telling my story. And then I build up. The first feathered friend is the chata, counterclockwise. Then the hawk shows up, and then it moves into caterpillar. And then it moves into cocoon. After the cocoon, the sun comes out. That's the sun. Then the kimimila. And then the sweat lodge. And then just for the kids, it's the easiest thing ever, but I just like to play with Mickey Mouse. And then I start making those globes in each direction that I just explained. It turns into globes. And then I build up into a big eagle. Then I'll connect them all and then hold up the universe. And then just play and fall out. I been doing that since 1988. I like my microphone. Okay, so then that's what I've been doing. Is the hoop dance, singing, dancing, designing, and all those. And the circle is nurturing. That's female. The square or triangle or stripes is male. So that's what I've learned, and I usually explain that to all the kids. But I see over here it's already after 4. So over there, it must be after 3. What time is it? I'm trying to stay on schedule.
4 o'clock.
Okay, it's 4 o'clock. So tell me, Yoka dia dada hey. Remember? Is he having a smoke and a smile? Are we even on? Was I performing to myself? Oh,
No, really.
Yay! You can sit down. Oh,
She disappeared.
no, I'm
Too
still
much-
here.
Oh, okay. Well, we can't see you on screen. These guys lost you.
Oh,
Peshlawi Chasha lost you. Oh, there you are. Okay. I shouldn't have made a joke about him. Now he's pouting. He's wachinkoing over there. Oh, there you are. There you are, my girl. Good to see you. You're looking good. Everything's happening good for you, I hope. And all is well. You
Yes.
made it through COVID and all that good
Yeah.
stuff, man. Been a while. You're
Yeah.
coming back to Fort Peck here for Creators Games? Yeah, and I think you're going to come back over
yes.
there. Oh, good job. You're busy all over, eh? Everywhere you go, you're going to a lot of schools doing that still? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, cool. Does anybody have any questions for Jackie? And anybody up here? We're having a cool gathering, Jackie, the Dakota, Lakota, and Nakona people. We got a language conference going on, so it's kind of a little bit relief for them to kind of listen to you and watch you and understand how you do these things and what you're doing out there in Indian country to promote our culture. And boy, that's dandy. That's good. And I had to mention Kola Tahashi, Kevin Locke. I knew that was your mentor, eh? Yeah. So
Yes.
and he's still going strong too. I see
Yeah.
where he's still getting after it, and all after all these years, Jackie. Oh no, you're not that old. Anything else you'd like to say in closing, young lady?
No, thank you. That's good. I'm just happy to see everybody. And Dokshake.
Oh, hecha tuelo. Dai chano chante washte yuha. Wopila chichi apalo. Oh, dokshake. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was Jackie Bird. Yeah, good buddy. She come and helps us out all the time in Fort Peck, and she works with our children and paints teepees and various other things. We call it the Creators Game. So she comes and helps us with that thing there. And she's always well received. Always does a good job. Okay, Kim, are we taking a break now for 15 minutes? Where'd she go? Yeah, okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take a break for 15 minutes, but come right back at 3:15 because we have I think it's the last speaker of the day, and that's Jessie taking the live rent counter. I think I'm related to her. Oh, another one. She must be making money trying to claim her. But she's going to come to us virtually too, but come back. She's written some children's books and all that. I told you before I was going to bring my older brother, Earl Bullhead, with me, but we had a death amongst our buddies down there. Again, just keep in mind, if any of you remember Mr. Bullbear, Marcel, he passed away, but so Earl went down to visit with him. But Jesse was one of Earl's students, one of his language students. That's what he does. He teaches language. But anyway, she's going to come back, and she wrote a couple of 3 or 4 children's books, and we'll discuss with her. So everybody, go get a good smoke and cup of coffee or whatever, and just get anxious about going to playing machines after this next speaker. Join the best nation in the world, donation. Hey, that's what I do all the time. Geez, I joined that nation I don't know how many times. Yeah, but anyway, go get something to drink and walk around, stretch your legs, and come back in 15 minutes. Okay, dokshake. All right, if we can get everybody to come back into the room, if you can hear me out in the hall. Timahed hiopo metakiapi, hiotakaheja. All right, we're going to go into the last speaker of the day, or actually the last presenter of the day. And in that, this individual is, she goes by the name of Jessie Taken Alive Rencounter, I believe is her name. And in that, I went on that 23andMe, that DNA thing. And here it had on there that I was related to the taken lives, and I must be, yeah, because it has it on there. They were my third or fourth great cousin. Oh, no such a thing. But again, she wrote some books. She got 3 or 4 books that she has written, and we really appreciate her coming here and helping us out. And she's going to share with us some good things here. Jesse Taken Alive Rencounter is a Hunkpapa Lakota author who has published 4 children's books. Her passion is to help people remember their importance in life and to utilize their unique talents to create better communities for future generations to come. She attends the session, and Jesse's to learn about the importance of incorporating Lakota and Dakota teachings and language in her books, and that they are being read in many different classrooms and homes. That's important, and it's a part of that, what Kevin was talking about earlier, affording them the opportunity to even think Dakota. When you start thinking like that, Lakota or Nakona, again, that gives you a different perspective on how you see things. So at this time, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you Jesse Taken Alive Rencounter. Jesse, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Oh, there she is, right on. Who's that guy you hang around with anyway? I know that guy.
He likes to call himself my husband. I'm just kidding. Yep, I'm happily married to my amazing husband for over 21 years now. So, yep, he's you probably know him, Whitney Rencounter from Palos, from emceeing Palos.
That's who I'm talking about. Yeah, I just seen him in Mandaree this weekend too, eh? I seen him on Facebook though. I was watching that Paulo through there, but didn't get to go, but enjoyed his announcing. So now it's all about you today and some of the accomplishments you did. And again, I am related to the Taken Lives, Dolores and Jay and all those guys, eh? So just to let you know that I'm your uncle. So when you get money, send me money. Oh, okay, Jesse, take it away. It's all yours.
All right. I'm better washe, chante washe na betu zapi, which be tumpiwi na Jesse Taken Alive Rencounter imachiapi. Hunk papa lakota imataha. Hello, relatives. It's an honor and a privilege to be here today amongst you virtually. I'm joining you all from the beautiful Black Hills in South Dakota. And so my daughter laughed at me today. We got done doing some song and dance presentations. And after we were done, I said, we got to wrap up here. I'm going to go downstairs and do an author presentation. She kind of laughed at me, Mom. But I said, this is what we do. This is part of our responsibility of being a good relative, is sharing about our history and our culture. Now I'm going to switch hats now today and share a little bit about being an author. I grew up on the Standing Rock Reservation all my life. My parents are the late Jay and Cheryl Taken Alive. My grandparents are Imogene and Pete Taken Alive, the late Imogene and late Pete Taken Alive, and as well as my maternal side, the late Charles and Luella Walker. And so I'm very honored to be able to share a little bit about what I know as an author and how I got into it and the importance of the reason why I wanted to become an author. And so I grew up on a reservation, and as a young girl, growing up in Standing Rock, my late grandfather, Pete Taken Alive, he was one of the very first educators in South Dakota. And he talked to us about the importance of education, about being able to walk in 2 worlds as a Lakota, he says. And he said, we have a little bit tougher, but we're strong, he says. Being able to know who we are and remembering our teachings and our culture, our language, our ceremonies and such, but also being able to walk in the other world and being able to attain what he called a Washichu man's education. And so he not just talked about it, but he walked that type of walk. And so it was amazing to see as a young girl growing up, my grandfather doing that. So when I was done, I went off to college when I was done with high school at Black Hills State University. There I graduated with the Indian Studies education as well as psychology. I fell in love with learning the history about the treaties and such of our people made with the government, and as well as the history, and because a lot of that stuff is not taught to you as kids, other than like your what you learn from your parents and such. So I let's see. Sorry, my computer is okay. So being able to walk in these two worlds was very important to us as a family. And so when I was done, I went on to get my master's degree in counseling, and I became a school counselor because I wanted to be able to help children, but as well as work in education at the same time. Working as a school counselor, I found some challenges because there was a lot of times where children would come into my office over the last 15 years and they would ask really difficult questions. One of them being, why do people do hurtful things? Or things of like, Mrs. Rencounter, they'd call me, I want to cut my hair. Like the little boys would come in, I want to cut my hair because I'm getting teased about being a girl and I don't like it. I'm tired of being called a girl or being threatened to have my hair cut and such. And so I found over the years that storytelling was very helpful for me, not only in my office, but also when I do my classroom presentations as a school counselor. And it didn't matter if it was a little Lakota kid that was in that classroom or it was a non-native kid in that classroom, storytelling always captured their attention. And it was always, funny because a lot of the teachers would say, how do you get so-and-so to sit still when I can't get them to sit still? Storytelling captures their attention, right? And, historically, as Dakota people, we always were storytellers. This is how we taught our children the values and the lessons and the history to be able to help them gain those values to be good relatives when they grew up. And so I started creating my own stories with our values instilled in them. And that's what would kind of get these kids excited about storytelling. Like, oh, Mrs. Rencounter, you're coming into our classroom today. What story are you going to tell us? And these are stories that they would, from kindergarten, they would talk about them all the way up to like in 5th grade, right? And so I knew that there was something there with storytelling. That very difficult question of, why do people do hurtful things? That was one of the very first things that made me realize that we need help. As Dakota people, we realize that, there's something bigger than us that helps us and guides us along the way. And I had a very difficult day one time at a school, and I was working like 650 kids to one counselor myself. And it seemed like it was always crisis, like mini crisis after mini crisis. And so I had a tough day. I called my husband and I said, hey, it's like, I'm going to be like an hour or so. And I said, go ahead and take care of the girls. You can get dinner started. And I went out to the Black Hills. And I went out to the Black Hills and I prayed and I asked Creator for guidance for my work with these Wakaija, because it was tough. It would pull at your heartstrings, some of those stories you would hear. And a couple nights later, I was blessed with a beautiful dream. And in this dream, an old man came to me and he shared with me. He took me someplace very beautiful, and when he took me there, he shared a very beautiful message that he wanted me to share with as many children as possible and many people as possible. And so I took that message and I turned it into a story because that's what I realized kids liked. And so I turned it into a story and I would tell it in my office all the time. And these children would go home and they would tell the story to their parents and their grandparents. And there was one particular grandfather that would call me and they would start calling me, these parents, grandparents, and asking me where I got the story, where can I get this book? And I said, well, it's not a book, it's just a story I made up. And this one particular grandfather, him and his wife were raising their takojas, their grandchildren. And he was Lakota, and he says, you said that's not a story, a book. He says, you need to make that into a book. He says, more people need to hear that. And so I said, you know what, that's a good idea. And so he goes, I'm going to be on your case until you get that done. So I didn't know anything about writing, publishing stories. I didn't know any real life authors. And so again, I turned to prayer, and I simply sat down at the computer and I Googled something like, how do you write a children's book, right? And I spent hours and hours researching on different routes and different paths. And so I found a publisher, a hybrid publisher, that fell in love with the story. And before they published it, I submitted it to a regional competition here in the States, throughout the Midwest. And I won what you call the Emerging Travel Writers Award. And I was so like surprised. I was like, whoa, like I won a writing award. And my husband always laughs at me. He says, you're a little bit too humble, huh? But that's just how my parents and my grandparents taught, is that we'd be humble and stuff. And so I didn't know what to do. And so when I published it, well, we're publishing this book, we're going to put that award on the front. And this was my very first book. This is what that old man's message came from. It's called Peta Shows Misu the Light. So this is my very first book, and I was able to, and I relied mainly on word of mouth, and I used the platform. Different newspapers here in the Midwest region were able to showcase this in their newspaper stories and the local news channels and such. And so I kind of used it as a platform, which was amazing to be able to get sales. So a lot of our schools around this area have this book. And I went on and I started thinking, I was like, hey, I think if I can publish one book, I think I can publish another one. And so this book came to me, the second book that I have. This is called We Are All Related, Midakuye Owase. This book came to me in a very similar way. And it came in mid 2020 when there was a lot of I guess you can say, like rallies going on here in the United States because of the George Floyd incident that happened in Minnesota with the killing of passing and murder of George Floyd. And you could just turn on the TV, you can see all the fighting and such. And I remember waking up and trying to wake up in the morning one time. And I had this weird experience and it's kind of funny to talk about because it's like, I don't know if you've ever experienced sleep paralysis, you know what I mean, where you can't wake up, right? You're like, you're aware of what everything's going around you, but you can't move your body. It's like you're frozen in your own body. So this happened to me. And I usually, when this happens, I'm like, oh no, there's somebody coming. Like, there's like a spirit that's coming to talk. And I always get like, my husband laughs at me and he's like, you get so scared. Why? I don't know. That's just how I am. I get really scared. But this woman came to me. And she walked in my room and I was like, oh gosh, what is she going to do? What is she going to say to me? But she kind of bent over and she started talking to me in my ear. And she did this book word for word. And in the bottom, it talks a little bit about how we're related to everything, that phrase of Midakuye Owase, right? And so on there, it basically was word for word that she shared with us, very simple phrase, very beautiful, simple, powerful message. And at the end of each phrase on each page, it says, instead of saying all my relatives, she says Midakuye. So we say Midakuye Owase, right? And so when she got to sharing this, she kind of like in this stern, almost like a grandma, loving but stern voice, she says, no, wake up and write. And then I woke up and I was like, whoa, that was like so powerful. And so I told my husband about it and he goes, hon, you need to write that book. And I was like, okay. So this is just basically that teaching that we have as Ocheti Shankoi people of Midakuye Owase, reminding us that we're related to everything, everyone on this earth. That's our teaching as Lakota, Dakota people, that we treat everything and everyone as a relative. Even the rocks are our relatives, right? We know that from our ceremonies. And so we believe that children, the Wakaija, that they're already born with this knowledge that unfortunately a lot of them forget because of the pains and the traumas that they experience. And also they see things role modeled around them, not just our own children, but children all over from different culture backgrounds. They see discrimination, they see division, they see hatred being role modeled. and they start to pick that up. And so this book is a reminder to those little children, the Lakaja, about how we're related to everything and everyone, and to treat that as to call it our relative. So that I wrote this book, my second book, and then I thought, right around the time I wrote that, I've been wanting to write a book for our little boys who have long hair, because I've worked with a lot of little boys. Me and my husband, we don't have any sons. We have 4 daughters, but I have nephews and I have friends who have sons with long hair. And it's always the same story of, like, you're really proud of your hair at home. You're really proud of your hair at ceremonies and proud of your hair at powwows and such. But when you get into school, children who don't know, who don't understand, who learn to start fearing what's different than themselves, they start teasing and bullying and being mean and calling names and such. And so I wanted to write a book that would empower these young boys. And this book follows a little boy's journey about him being bullied and teased and such about his long hair, and he wants to cut his hair, right? But someone in this book shares with him in a story, shares some about the teachings and importance of our hair, and kind of empowers him to be able to keep it, but not just keep it, but also to be proud of who you are. Because I think, as children, like I said, you start learning from what's role modeled around you to fear what's different. And so that's when we have like bullying happening. Words are said, things are done that are very hurtful. And so this book is not just for little boys or little boys that have long hair or Indigenous boys. It's for everybody, to remind you of how unique we are, how special we are, how beautiful it is that we came from that one creator, and that's kind of like our superpower, right? And then this last book that I have is called Rainbows in December. Now, I think we all have experienced a lot of challenges over the last couple of years with the pandemic that happened worldwide. And along with that came a lot of passing of our relatives, including both of my parents. I lost both my parents to COVID in November and December of 2020. And, historically, there has always been teachings, there's always been stories about how to be able to realize that that's a part of life, that there's life, but there's also death, right? And there's protocols and there's ceremonies that take place for that to help us. Today, when we have our fast-paced society, we have school, we have work, and as soon as a loved one passes, it's like, boom, we're expected to be back to work within like a certain amount of days and back to school and such. And we have a hard time processing that passing, that transition of a relative from this physical world into the spiritual world. And so this actually came out of my own grief for when my parents have passed. And I realized as a mother that, I felt like I was so encompassed in my own grief that I forgot about that my 4 daughters were grieving for their grandparents, for their unchi, for the lala, that they were close to as well. And so I started realizing, like, oh my goodness, if this is happening to my own children, like, how many other children is this happening to? And I saw it happening as a school counselor, children coming in having panic attacks because they don't know how to process their grief, right? And so I wanted to write a book with our teachings in there to try to normalize that process, but also to be able to empower our children to still live life, to still be able to live life, but honor that legacy of their loved one that's passed on into the spirit world. But also to look for the signs, because our loved ones aren't gone forever, that they just transitioned, they transformed into another realm, but they're still able to communicate with us if we look for those signs. And so that's what this 4th book is about that came out. And Rainbows in December, the title is interesting because the burial, we had a double burial for both my parents, and it was in North Dakota, freezing, probably like maybe not freezing to you guys. It was a little bit above zero, right? A little bit above zero, but it was freezing and it was cold. The wind chill was there. And it was so cold. And we all know, living in the area that we do, that, you know, we don't see a lot of stuff happening in December. It's cold and such. On our way home from the burial, we were going back to the hometown where I grew up, where my parents' house was. And I'm like thinking like, oh my gosh, did I just bury my parents? Did we just bury my parents? Like expecting my parents to be at their house, right? And I'm like sitting and putting my head against the window, and I'm looking out, and I realize there's a big rainbow, not a sundog, but a real actual rainbow that stretched all the way across the sky in the end of December. And I thought, what are the odds of having a rainbow? But there's a story behind that, because that was my sign that my mom and dad are okay, and that everything's going to be okay with me and my siblings, our children and such. That was the sign that was given, because as a little girl, my dad, you know, I used to be fascinated with rainbows, and I used to make my dad chase the rainbows when we lived in a country throughout the pastures. And when we chased the rainbows, of course, we would never catch them, right? But my dad used to like let me believe that we could catch them. And we'd always used to say that there is magic in that rainbow. At the end of the rainbow, we're going to catch the gold and such. And so my dad, even up to like 5 years ago, would tell me, he goes, sis, he goes, you're the magic in that rainbow. That's the magic that he's like, you are, that's who we are. He says. And so when he showed me that sign, it was like, wow, it's beautiful. And of course we had like 4 eagles on that burial day, and each on the way up to the burial and stuff. So all kinds of signs. And it brought so much comfort to me. And I realized that like when we look and we're open to those signs like that it makes us feel connected. It helps us realize that there's not a disconnect in between us. It's just a change of worlds is what it is. And so I wanted to share one of my books today, to go through it and show you this book. I'm gonna do a live reading right here. It's called Thunder's Hair. Like I said, this book addresses bullying, but you're going to see a lot of our own Indigenous teachings in this, as well as some school counseling teaching as well too, through a cultural lens, as well as a school counselor lens, to kind of help empower our children to be proud of who they are. So I'm going to go ahead and read this. I wanted to see if I could read this on my laptop. I'm going to see if I can share my screen here, if that'll work or not. Let's see here. Okay, so in the meantime, also, maybe you guys can be thinking of some questions that you might want to ask when, let's see, I won't be able to share my screen, but if it's okay, I'll just go ahead and read it from here. Okay, I'll try my best to read through here. Okay, so this is called Thunder's Hair. And this is, the story is based off of true events. And I got to interview a lot of my friends, the mothers of these boys with long hair, and some of their bullying incidents, and then kind of get their stories. And so everything, all the scenes in here, these are all based off true stories. Even the beginning of the scene, you'll see the mom and stuff that's based off a true events, I guess. So, all right, we'll go ahead and get started. Oops. The sun was rising with a beautiful pink glow and began to show life to the east. Thunder's mom set his stool facing the window to the east, just like she did every morning. It was their morning ritual that started their day. She combed Thunder's hair and quietly sang a morning song as Thunder sat rubbing his eyes to wake up. Son, what are your hopes for the day? Thunder yawned. Oh, I hope that I pass my spelling test and kids are nice to me. Thunder's mom continued to braid and said, what do you mean you hope they are nice? Thunder sighed. Just sometimes they can say things that upset me. Thunder's mom grew quiet as she watched the sun light up the sky. She said, sometimes when others are mean, it's because they are hurting inside and forget who they are when they were born. Just smile at them and walk away. If it continues, you can always get help from a teacher. Continue to lead by example and show others how to be kind. His mom continued to braid his hair, placing the 3 strands one over the other and sliding them over her fingers, and always seemed like she was putting her wishes into each strand as she gently braided. When she was done, she put the elastic at the bottom of the braid and kissed him on the forehead. She said, "Son, I hope you have a great day today. Don't forget to ask for good things and wisdom when you leave the house." The morning went by quickly, and Thunder's spelling test wasn't so bad after all. The morning recess bell rang and he welcomed the fresh air as he walked out the courtyard. Just then he saw 2 boys running towards him. "Hey, Thunder, where's your dress? Only girls have long hair." Both boys laughed as one of the boys started to dance around and pretend to sing a powwow song as he hit his hand against his mouth, portraying an old Hollywood Indian. Thunder shook his head in disbelief and walked the other way. Just then, one of the boys came running behind him and pulled on his hair. He snarled and said, "You know, I can give you a haircut when we get back inside. I'll help you understand what it's like to be a boy and live in today's world." Thunder felt his face getting hot and clenched his fists. He was just about to push the other kid when he remembered the words of his grandpa. We become the lesser version of ourselves when we solve our problems with our fists. Instead, he took a deep breath and pulled his long braid into his sweater and turned the other way. Kaya came running quickly. She hollered, "Hey, leave him alone. Quit being a bully." The boys ran away laughing as if they had accomplished something big. Kaya glared at them as they ran away and said, "Yeah, keep running, you big bullies." She turned her attention to Thunder and quietly asked, "Are you okay? You know it's okay to tell the teacher and let her know what they say." Thunder shook his head and said, "No, they'll think I'm tattling." Kaya said, "There's a difference between reporting something when someone is being hurtful to another compared to tattling just to get someone in trouble. If you let them go, they will continue to say things to you and even pick on others. If you won't tell, I will." Kia must have kept her promise because by the afternoon, Thunder was sitting in the principal's office being questioned about the incident that morning. Even though he did not want to tell, he shared as many bullying events as he could remember. The car ride home that day seemed a long and quiet one as his mom's eyes swelled with tears. "I wish you would have told me about the disrespectful remarks of your long hair earlier, son. We could have put a stop to this when it started happening." Thunder looked out the window, watching the trees and houses pass by. He sighed and mumbled, "Huh, what's the use? If we get them to stop, there will be another kid next year. It's just best that I cut my hair so nobody has anything to say. My life would be so much easier with short hair." When they pulled into the driveway, Thunder grabbed his backpack and walked toward the front door. His head hung low, feeling hopeless and defeated. He turned to look at his mom and saw her wiping her tears. "This has caused me a lot of pain, and now you too. If you will not cut my braid, I will cut it off myself this evening," Thunder said sadly. He threw himself on his bed and stared at his posters hanging on the wall. All of these superheroes have short hair. None of them have long hair or look like me, he thought. Just then, there was a knock on his bedroom door. His grandma peeked in with her usual gentle smile. "Grandson, will you help me carry the wood for the sweat lodge?" Thunder would never tell his grandmother no, so he happily went out to help. As he carried and placed the logs just right in the fireplace, Grandma asked him to join her as she watched and listened to the crackling fire. "Our ceremonies have been around for many years now, grandson. They have helped their people through so many hardships. I have seen a lot of changes over the years since I was a young girl many years ago. My grandma would tell me about what it meant to be a warrior. She said that a warrior is not someone who just protects other people. They also protect their own spirit. When others try to make us feel bad for who we are, warriors stand strong and proud, continuing to be who they were born to be." Grandma took her hair clip out of her silver hair, let it out, and started to braid it. "Our people have always known the power of our hair. These teachings have been passed down for thousands of years. We say that our hair has a special part of us in it, our spirit. It is our connection to the ancestors before us and to the spirit world. When we wear it long, it helps us in this physical world that can be confusing at times. Grandma continued to braid her hair. She said, each of these three parts represent the three parts of us, our mind, body, and spirit. This is why we take care of our hair and why our people continue to wear our hair long. If we cut it, we lose that special connection. Thunder suddenly felt a sense of pride in this long braid as he started to stared into the fire. He could not believe he had thought of cutting his hair earlier. He knew exactly what he wanted to do. The next morning, Thunder asked his mom to braid his hair into 2 braids. He closed his eyes and envisioned past warriors with their hair in braids and paint on their face. He also imagined his strong lawyer uncle and his long braids. Side. When it was time to walk into school, Thunder walked with a sense of pride. Like a modern day warrior, he knew that he carried with him the strength of warriors of the past and today. As he walked, he saw the 2 boys and could hear the whispers around them. Sorry. He could even hear the whispers and giggles around him. This time, he did not hang his head. Rather, he walked proudly over to the boys and said, I was born with this brown skin. This is who I was meant to be. I am proud of who I am because I carry the strength of many warriors with me. You will never make me feel bad for who I am and how I choose to wear my hair. There is strength in accepting others who are different than us. I hope that someday you will learn this too. Thunder turned away and started walking toward the door of the school. He could imagine the sound of the drum beat in his head as he stepped with confidence. Each stride he took made him imagine past warriors walking where his feet touched the ground. He stood tall and smiled as he saw his reflection in the window of a young warrior staring back at him. So I wanted to also share too, of course, after we do the reading and I do presentations and such, I talked a little bit and asked about the teachings that were taught throughout the book. Many different teachings, not only about our hair, but also how to be proud of who we are. That, the teaching about being a warrior, not just protecting other people, but we also protect our spirit. And we can go into long discussions about that too. But I forgot to share at the very beginning of the book, before the first page starts, I share a little bit about our culture and our history. I talk about, I share the truth about the history of what happened to our people and how we used to always wear our hair, long and in braids and such. And that a lot of these teachings and these ways were almost lost when our children were taken into boarding schools and stripped of their cultural identity, one being their hair being cut. And so I think that was important to put in there for the teacher, the parent, or whoever it is, the grown-up that's reading that book, or even the older child, because that teaches a little bit of how we got to where we are today, but I also share there too that a lot of our Lakota, Dakota, or indigenous families in general, that we're returning to our teachings, and one being we're growing our boys' hair long again, and we're teaching them those teachings. And so once children have that understanding of why we wear hair long as indigenous people, why we have them in braids and such, there's a lot more understanding. And when there's understanding, we have that acceptance. And so it's really beautiful to see, parents and teachers share with me the responses of not only just children, but especially the little boys with long hair, and how much pride they have in their hair. And they said they kind of walk around like a little superhero, like a little warrior, right? And so a lot of the times what I'll find is these little boys, when they read these, parents read this book to them at home, is the next day they want to wear their hair in braids. And it's not just little boys, it's little girls too. They want to showcase that, hey, I'm indigenous, I'm a Lakota, I'm a Dakota, and they wear their hair and they wear it into braids. And so it's very beautiful, because, you know, and part of this of becoming a children's author, to not only reinstill these cultural teachings to our children, and their peers and their teachers and such, but also I wanted to create books where children, our own indigenous children, can see people and characters that look like them in books. Because, you know, for myself growing up, I didn't see much of that. We had like the Paul Goebel books of like Ikdomi and such, but I thought that's a people like who we are, who we used to be, right? That doesn't look like how I am today. And so I wanted to make sure I created characters that look like our children so they can take pride in that as well too. But I want to go ahead and I want to open it up to any questions that we might have. So Lexi, I'll call you Lexi, Tommy. You want to kind of be our moderator and kind of take any questions that we might have from people in the audience or online?
Oh, how, Toja. Anybody got any questions for Jesse right now? Again, yes, ma'am. Good question. She asked, where is a good place or how could she order those books?
Sure. So I have a website and it's just jessierencounter.com. So I'll spell out Jessie. It's just Jessie. My last name, my married last name is Rencounter, RENCOUNTRE.com. So that's a website there. If you're wanting to order from my website, I do like bulk orders for schools and organizations and such. But if you're just looking for like maybe like 1 or 2 books, they're available on Amazon as well too. So you can find them listed there anywhere online.
Oh, cool. Any other questions for Jesse? Okay, it looks like everybody's they're sleeping. No, that was such a beautiful experience. Thank you, Jesse, for actually reading. You know, they have readings, wasichus, they have readings and stuff like that. But is that the first time you read your book to an audience, if you will?
It's not. I've done a lot of readings, virtual readings through presentations for different school districts throughout the country. Instead of me jumping on a plane and going to their schools, I do presentations like this. So, but I want to encourage our audience too. We have a lot of storytellers amongst our people, and I want to encourage, if you have that inclination to write a book, whether it's a children's book or an adult book, for our people to help empower them to share a history and such, to write it, because we can never have enough Native Indigenous authors to do that. So we want to normalize that to help our children know that, hey, they can be authors as well too. So I want to leave that in closing too, to encourage people to do that.
Cool. You know, I got a question myself. I'm involved in education. I work for the Fort Peck Community College as their cultural liaison and all that good stuff. Education is important to me, and as it should be to everybody else, for our ability to live in 2 worlds. What is your position as an educator, a counselor, if you will, a therapeutic individual that's in schools for our young children, even writing books about it? What's your position on CRT?
Well,
because it's right at the edge. What you address is just right at the edge of what's really going on, eh? Mm-hmm. How do you feel about that? And not to be political, and I'm not asking it from a political perspective. I'm asking it from a perspective of we talk obo money, eh? We walk with the truth.
Right, right. You know, it's funny because this is the second time I have this question, even with even with this a question of the day, I think. Even when I did doing my cultural presentations today as well too, I had a gentleman come up to me and ask me, you know, and I always like to share that it's important for us to share the truth. It's important for us to share what is there. And I always say, you know, when we're sharing our truth, it's never to make anyone feel bad, because you know, my husband always has this saying is like, when we know better, we can do better, right? And it's never to, intentions are to never make anyone feel bad. We want to share, because when we share the truth, we're able to move on. We're able to bridge those relationships, the rapport and such. You know, I think that sharing that truth and such is important. Because if we try to hide that and we try to tiptoe and walk in eggshells around it, that we're not really doing justice for the children and such. So, but
No, that's a good answer. And again, you remain somewhat apolitical, eh? Because
right,
that's who we are as a people. We relate to that. And from a spiritual perspective, we try to remain apolitical and apersonal in any agenda, especially with our children, our youth. So, hey, that's right on. I really appreciate that. I really enjoyed the reading, actually. You have a very beautiful voice and all that good stuff. I was trying not to go to sleep. Not that soothing. But any other questions from the audience, if you will? And CRT, what that means is critical race theory. It's quite an issue in the United States. It's really, especially in schools, they become political. The Republicans don't want it taught because they're scared of the truth of the atrocities and but anyway, and I'm glad you had that. That's a very beautiful answer as well, Jesse. Thank you very much. Anything else from anybody? Got any concerns about the books? We know where to get them. Can go to Amazon, but we can also contact her. Go ahead.
on the and my next print that'll be coming out and stuff. My next print is going to have actually there's a gal from Wisconsin who fell in love with the book, and her aunt has her doctorate in curriculum writing and such, and they fell in love with the book where they were able to make a lesson plan for teachers, educators in the classroom, so they can share with children as early as kindergarten all the way up through high school. There's an activity where they do, and there's teachings and such in there where they take yarn and they teach them how to braid and how that incorporates into taking care of our own self, but also talking about bullying and stuff. So, you know, I wanted to share that as well too, that will be available in the next reprints, that it'll in the back of the book, we're hoping to have that in there. And if not, too, I'm going to be putting that lesson plan up on my website as well too. So.
And then we got somebody on here. Who are you?
Jesse.
That's Jackie. Oh, I didn't recognize you, Jackie.
I actually made her something for her books.
Oh,
wow. Cool. Right on.
I already know her address, but I thought of her when I was making it. All her books when she does her presentations. I already know it will fit all her books.
Oh, that's.
I just wanted to give this to you in front of everybody.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
All right, they're all clapping for you. Thank you, Jackie. Good job. Oh man, if that ain't Dakota, Lakota, Nakona way. You know, we don't have much, but what little we have, we're taught to share. And that's a classic example of that. And again, I just want to say thank you, Jesse. That was a very beautiful experience. And I'm glad you're addressing a lot of those issues from a young child's perspective, eh? And as a therapist, I'm really glad you're involved with our children and writing about it. That guy that told you to write that book, he was absolutely right. So good job, good job. Anything else? If not, again, we thank you, Jesse, taking the live rent counter. Tell your husband I said hello. It'll be good to see him in the future somewhere down the powwow trail. Yeah, good job. So, and again, we just want to say thank you very much. How? How'd you do?
Thank you.
All right, good job. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank all the speakers for today. That was our last presentation of the day, but we'd like to welcome you all back tomorrow. Come back about 8:45. We're wishing to get started about right at 9 o'clock and kind of stay on schedule. We're not going to retire the Eagle staff and the flags. We're just going to leave them here until tomorrow, and then at the end of the conference, we will retire them appropriately. So with that, we're going to wish you all well. Have a good evening. We had a wonderful day. Process the information you got today. Think about it. And again, if you have any questions tomorrow, we'll take it upon ourselves to try to find an answer for you in that. But again, I'm going to leave here. I have to attend church. I really got to go pray over at the casino. Next. But again, I'd like to thank all of you for being such an attentive audience, for staying with us all day, and really appreciate that. A lot of good stuff hanging around Indians. It's not that bad, you know. Hey. But enjoy your evening. Hopefully have a good sleep. You win at the casino. Oh here, like that. Yeah. But we'll see you tomorrow morning. About 8:45, we'll start at 9. Hao mitake oasi.